Hello chap here, welcome back to the workshop and back to the fluffy Swiss blanket for another show and tell. And what I have for you today is a unique F-11 in .22 caliber. It's made by Unique and it's also pretty unique. There's not too many about anymore. So essentially what we have is a Unique X51 B. I have a video on this specific rifle. It has a certain nostalgic value to me, and indeed for quite a demographic in France. Think of it as the French Ruger 1022 at the time. So it's very rugged, very easy to maintain, very easy to clean, plenty accurate for its intended purposes as just a fun rifle and a blinker. And it's a good base for making a sort of service-inspired rifle. Just to note, this is not a trainer in the military sense. It was never used by recruits or anything. This was purely a commercial product. So I hate seeing this on anything that resembles a service weapon in .22. It's automatically assumed to be a trainer. Not always the case. So you take one of those and you give it some F1 furniture. And so essentially we have a lamb in wolf's clothing. As far as I can make out, these came onto the market in France in 1983. There's an article in 1982 in the Gazette des Armes talking about the handling of the prototype, and then there's a follow-up article 1 year later where they announced that it should be entering the market at time of publishing. So 1983, the numbers produced, the number that you always see repeated in articles is about 1,000. But all the time I see that number, it's always about 1,000. So there's no definite concrete number. And it seems to me a rather low number, but apparently Unique at the time had some financial difficulties, so maybe they were not hedging their bets completely on this rifle, so maybe they just did a limited production run. But yeah, 1,000 seems pretty low, especially at a time where the FAMAS is, the production is up and running. They're starting to be distributed to the troops in large numbers, and there should be a sort of a patriotic pride of a new service rifle. And I would assume that the shooting population would like to get their hands on, as close as they can get in, especially in a caliber that is accessible to all. But yeah, this number of 1,000 seems to be what's quoted, and the survival rate seems to be quite low. I think not in the sense of the internal mechanism, which we'll get to when we take it apart, but the furniture here is plastic. It's not the fiber reinforced polymer and resin of the service rifle, and they apparently suffered quite badly. In particular, the top cover here, which has the bipod mounted, that could crack. And this on the back is quite a chunky piece with plenty of internal reinforcement, so I don't think that's too much of a risk. But the top and the bottom here, apparently quite fragile. And the most common story is that quite a lot of these went to shooting galleries in fun fairs. And there you can imagine they're being handled by the general population, kids, whatever. And yeah, they got scrapped slowly, and nowadays there's not very many about. In terms of the external features, they are of course very, very close to the real thing. We have the end of the barrel here, which reproduces the grenade launching rings here on the front, and the depth stop. This is just for show, it doesn't move. You can unscrew it and place it elsewhere, but it doesn't do anything. Flash hider is also very close to the original. You can unscrew it and put on a silencer if you wish. The bipod here, which is probably one of the reasons why I suspect there was some breakages. The legs look the same, however, you need to unscrew a little knurled stopper and then put them down and then lock it up again. I expect that people kind of saw how the FAMAS one works, where you just pull it back and push down, and if you don't do this here, I'm suspecting that there would be some breakage. So I had to remind myself a couple of times not to yank it down. I don't want to break it. And then we have the safety controls. Here is like the original. We have a flag, Obviously here in both cases it is just semi-auto, no fun switch on this. And we have a fake magazine with a magazine release here, and the magazine is this very, very long 10-round magazine. It's limited to 10 rounds due to the legislation at the time, unfortunately. It could probably take, I think, at a pinch 20, probably closer to 15 with 2.2. And it's very long because it has to reach all the way in there. So half of it is empty space. And this is, of course, a solid piece. And here at the back is also solid plastic. There's no rubber butt plate like on the original. And the sling swivels are cast into the plastic part. Also, there is no way to convert it from left to right-handed. Let's have a quick look at the sights, which are actually very, very faithful to the original. The front sight post is a blade spring, which is biased in one direction, and there is a screw that allows you to push the blade in and out so you can get the lateral adjustment. And on the rear we have exactly the same diopter openings as we have on the real thing, with different size openings depending on the light conditions, and a tiny precision shooting one here. And this you can adjust in height using a little thumb wheel which is tucked away down there, so you can't inadvertently bump it. There are numbers on the thumb reel. Unfortunately, they don't seem to correspond to anything specific. The manual doesn't give you any clues either, so you just have to twiddle with the thumb wheel until you get the sight picture you want. Now, between the two here, there is nothing to see, unlike on the service upper, which has a fixed night sight there, and also the flip-up sight for direct shoulder-fired rifle grenades when you go hardcore mode. Now, as I said, this is essentially very reasonably flimsy plastic, as you can see, and whereas the fiber reinforced polymer here, you basically can't touch it, crush it. It's extremely sturdy, and a consequence of that, I found that when shooting off the bipod, there's a lot of flex left and right, because this essentially has no rigidity whatsoever, so it sort of flops all over the place. All right, let's take it all apart. The pins out, just like the originals. This one, the butt is actually under tension inside, so I have to press against it and then slide everything out. I really want to. There we go. That's one. So that's one unit, as I said. But this is quite robust, unlike the top cover here. I don't think there's any danger of that breaking any time. And then, oops, take the pin out, that would help. That slides off just like the original too. Get these out of the way. And we get something which is literally a rifle inside a rifle almost. And we'll continue by disconnecting the trigger from the trigger bar, and then we can even take the lower off, which you can't do on the real thing. So this is the lower, also relatively squishy plastic. Here you can see the trigger mechanism, which is exactly like the real thing. Here's the safety. That just blocks the travel of the trigger with this wedge of cheese here. And that's the transfer bar to trigger, which is wibbly wobbly. On the real thing, we have a biasing spring that tensions the trigger bar as well, so it doesn't flop all over the place. But it's not going to come out when it's in place anyway. And here we have the mechanism itself. So the sights are mounted on the barrel, and this is not free floated like on the real thing. We have a support here on the handguard, contrary to the real thing here, where the barrel here is free floated from the breech. This bit is just a tube over the top. But yeah, you can see it's pretty close to the original. They got as close as they could functionally get with a 2.2. And this part here is the unique X51 bis mechanism, and we can take that apart again. So this thing here at the back is just to tension the buttstock so it doesn't flop about. So this pushes into the stock here with this ring to make sure the whole thing is nice and rigid. This is the extension for the mag release. For some reason they made this so that it protrudes really far into the mag well, which means that you can't insert a mag without pushing on the mag release, which is a bit weird. On the X51 bis, it's not like that. You can just push it in. Right, we shall go one stage further. This is an interesting thing. It's not mentioned as a safety in the manual, but I remove this pin. We can remove the lower part of the rifle. So here the hammer is cocked. There is a magazine safety here, but this thing is the hammer spring. And that gets tensioned when you put the buttstock on, which means that when the buttstock's not on, you can pull the trigger as much as you like. The hammer is not going to fall. There's no spring pressure. So it's, I don't know if it was an intentional hammer spring safety or not, but that's the way it works. And yeah, the rest is exactly the same as an X51 bis carbine. You can just take everything apart, and that's the breech, and here's the recoil spring, and this is what is pushed on by this plastic charger handle, which is inspired by the real thing. Again, this is just plastic. Yeah, you have to take everything apart to be able to change that if that breaks. But yeah, this is the barrel is fairly chunky, and it's well supported, so I expect this will shoot quite well. From the reports I've seen, they all seem to shoot very, very well indeed. You know, obviously not a competition rifle, but certainly very, very good for a plinking carbine. Just to compare it to the X51, so here we have a front plunger which pushes back the breech instead of this. This is what the civilian model looks like. So everything else is really exactly the same. I have removed the magazine safety because they annoy me, and also what is not present is the something very unique to this carbine is this little knurled knob here, which allows you to activate or not the bolt stop. So you can turn this from semi-auto to single shot if you want. So that's not there. And here is the hammer spring. Here it's obviously secured permanently in the buttstock section here. So there's no way of deactivating the hammer on this. And yeah, otherwise, see, there's a couple of differences in holes. Here the crossbar safety is not needed, so that's gone. And also here, that's the mag release. Also not there. You've got this fairly awkward lever down there, but you have to have something that's easily accessible. So there we go. There's been several attempts I've seen of making one of these into a F-11, basically using an X51 bis receiver and barrel and using FAMAS airsoft bits. I don't know how successful that would be, but yeah, some people have been attempting to make copies of it, but I don't know if anyone was successful. I think it would, nowadays, if someone could make a 2.2 version of the FAMAS, I think it would sell well everywhere. So if anyone's looking for a project, big companies out there, here's something that it might be a good cash cow for you. While reassembling it, I forgot to show you the nice little unique logo, the footman with his lance and shield, and on the other side we have F-11. So I assume, seeing that there's some machining part steps which are for the carbine and others for specifically the F-11, that these parts were machined, let's say, during, or were separated during the manufacturing process. It's not that finished X51s were drawn off, taken off the pile and converted into F-11s. And so while we're here, just show you the cocking action. So you have this plastic handle which has these nice sturdy shoulders on the back, and that pushes back to work the action. Close up of the sights once again. Here we have a blade spring which is bias out, so to the left, and a screw which you can screw in to push it to the right. You've got a couple of reference notches here, and if you unscrew it, it releases the blade spring and it pushes itself, tends to the left. And here is the rear sight post, very, very similar to the original. The slightly rounded Bolton portion here as opposed to squared on the original. But here's the thumb screw there, which is locked in place with this little latch. And it's numbered 1 to 6, and that moves this entire column up and down. But yeah, as I said, the 1 to 6 doesn't correspond to anything specific. I'm assuming they literally just took the same thumb wheel as in the real thing. So there's no correspondence of those numbers to any specific distance, especially for a 2.2. Enough talk, let's head to the range.
Vorhin liegt 15 Meter wahrscheinlich. Ja, fest. Und dann geht noch eine Paket, ja. Lieber meine. Ja, ora reći što jutro da znam. To je dobro. Zde nic nie poradzi, nie mam pewnie pomóc. Bo mi w głowie szumi narka. Nej. Jag kör vidare.
So as you saw there, really nice, handy and accurate little carbine for, that was only 25 meters, but still, it's a 2.2, that's what it's supposed to be used for. I've had people who have been hitting gongs with these up to 200 meters with no issues. They just have to aim up because the sights are not calibrated for it. So yeah, it's definitely got very good potential. It's immense fun. The only downside I can see, apart from having slightly fragile furniture if you don't take care of your gear, is the magazine insertion. So it has to go a very long way. You have to also work the magazine release lever, so to do sort of weird open palm thing, and it doesn't always line up with the internal receiver, so there's a step between the plastic housing and the receiver, so it means that the mag is not guided naturally into where it should be, so you can get it stuck. So I had hopes of sort of doing amazing things in the Cabin Fever Challenge in the 2.2, but one, I've only got 2 chargers and magazines, and 2, the insertion may go horribly wrong. So we'll see. I'll probably still do it anyway, just for the funs. But there we go. Unfortunately, these magazines are extremely, extremely rare. So chances of having 4 would be highly unlikely. So yeah, that's my only sort of gripe against the thing as such. It fed everything. I took sort of quite a wide variety of ammunition, from hollow point mini mags, some cheap and nasty top shots, and Remington Thunderbolt, and I had 1 box of very expensive 2.2 competition grade, and that gave the groups that I showed you. So off the bipod, it was absolutely perfect. So the brand has an influence on the group size, as it often is, but in terms of feeding, it fed absolutely everything. Not surprising, it's based on a very solid workhorse. So yeah, this is it's a shame that there are not many about. As I said, there's kind of projects that are trying to revive it, but in this day and age, it could be a good candidate for another sort of Ruger 1022 build. This is basically the OG of that meme where it says, you know what, F you, bullpups your X51 B. This is the OG of that meme is is this little carbine here. But so yeah, maybe if someone could come up with it, or maybe it already exists, I don't know. But it would be a fun little project, and I think commercially maybe it's not viable anymore, because there are a lot of reasonable quality and even some very good quality airsoft FAMAS. So I think for sort of messing around in your garden and stuff, it's no one's going to buy a 2.2 version. But certainly as a conversion kit, I could see that as being very interesting. So here we are at the end of this episode. Thank you very much again to our anonymous patron or donor for allowing me to borrow this. Just a little aside before I go, for those who are not familiar with the Swiss system, essentially there's no provision for me or for someone to loan me a rifle if they are not present on a range. So this, for me to have this without the person being here, I legally have to take possession of the rifle. So there's no money exchanged. That's irrelevant anyway for the permit system. But yes, so this is legally transferred to me, and then I legally transfer it back at the end. I'll be sorry to let it go, but that's the way it is. So thank you for watching, and see you next time down here or out on the range. Bye.